Hello everybody, I'm back to continue the discussion of UBI, why I think that universal basic income is just a new bells and whistles socialism theory, and once you dig down into it, it's the same socialism. It has all the same problems that Marxism has. And it ignores all the aspects of reality that Marxism ignores. So, where I was at before is that I wanted to talk about the problem of scarcity. So this is a classic problem with Marxism. That Marxism and socialism never addresses the problem of scarcity. What does that mean? What is scarcity? Well, what happens is all of the economy is based on basic things that come from the earth. If you follow whatever you're talking about, whether you're talking about cell phones or you're talking cell phones or cigarettes or beer or bug spray, things in my life. All of it eventually comes, inevitably, if you trace back the things that come together to give us those products, you eventually come back to natural resources and things that come out of the earth, things that grow out of the ground. So even if something is totally man-made, well, men had to make it, and men have to eat, and men have to drink. So so everything comes basically from that. So that's why agriculture and mining and things like that, basic industries like that, which they call commodities, are always essential, and they're never going to go away, and always important. So what happens though with nature is that nature is unpredictable. Okay, so sometimes things change. Sometimes there's a good crop of corn. Sometimes there's a bad crop of corn. Sometimes there's a good crop of potatoes in Ireland in the 18th century, and sometimes there's a bad crop, and you have the Irish potato famine. Thousands of people die. So this is a big thing that happened if you follow the Saharasia theory. This is something that happened in the Middle East, the Sahara and Asian area. Some 10,000 years ago, there was a huge desiccation. Like, this used to be a fertile land, but then the seasons changed, things changed. There was climate change. I mean, there's been climate change forever, okay? And it happens, and what happens is it changes what kind of resources we can get out of the earth. So, how do people deal with that? How does humanity deal with that? Well, we have different ways of dealing with it. Back in the, what we do is we change, we adapt. And so, in an open free market, people can adapt very quickly to changes like this. Society can adapt very quickly if left free to its own devices. Historically, adapts very quickly to these sudden changes and crises situations. So what happens is, well, sometimes people move, they migrate, they find a different kind of food. There's like other people in a neighboring territory are like, well, our grape crops are so good, let's go sell grapes to them. So all of a sudden, they're exchanging, and instead of eating potatoes or whatever, they're eating grapes. These things happen. These things, occur throughout history. So under socialist systems, what happens is the government comes in and they say, we're going to manage. You can't trust capitalists to get food to people, right? Which, if you live in the West, you should know that's fallacious right now. Walk into any fucking grocery store, and it's like there's more food in here than anyone really needs. We have no problem with food in the West. Capitalism has been very good to us as far as that goes. We live in a society where pretty much no one goes hungry, regardless of your status in life. Even homeless people. There's enough food around that homeless people can get by. So, but I mean, in socialist systems or Marxist systems, they say, well, you cannot trust these capitalists to get food to people. So this is too important. Food is too important. Like Obama said about the banks, too important to let them fail. We're going to have to intervene. I'm sorry, not the banks, the auto industry. But they say that about the banks too every time there's a crisis. So what they say is that food is too important. I mean, seriously, people will buy that like banks and auto industry is too important to fail. How hard is it to sell people on food is like too important to fail? Not that in a socialist system you have a choice about whether you buy into the theory or not. It just is what it is. But the government has absolute control over it. So what has happened in these systems is there will be a huge famine, and since the government is not able to force people to work and grow crops as fast as free people would, they're not able to get food to the places where they need it. So this is what happened in the Ukraine. You always hear about the mass starvation in the Ukraine. Similar thing there. And there was and this also happened in North Korea in the 70s. There was a huge famine in North Korea, and Carter actually stepped in to like send them aid at the time. If you read about it in the book Dear Reader, the unauthorized biography of Kim Jong-il, it talks about this. And what they did, their solution was the disloyal people, the number 3 ranking people, who are the people that live out in the sticks. They're like, well, we'll just like not feed them. So they just fucking starved them. So thousands of people, millions of people like starved to death. So, and this is because Marxism, even if you study Marxism, you study Das Kapital, you study the Communist Manifesto, Marx never deals with the problem of scarcity. And socialists never deal with the problem of scarcity either. And would never acknowledge that the best solution to the problem of scarcity is to simply leave people alone. The best solution is for a government to get out of the way. So, two ways this applies to UBI. First of all, since UBI requires a totally managed economy, everyone is getting everyone's getting whatever $5,000 a month. That requires management of everyone of the economy to such a level that we have never seen before. Everyone will have to get that exact amount of money with no exceptions. So this is going to change people's spending habits. Again, it's going to change people's work habits. Maybe no one wants to go work work on the farm and raise crops. Maybe no one wants to work to drive trucks that bring food around. So there's all sorts of possible scenarios where that would lead to scarcity. But there's another aspect in which this leads to scarcity, and that's the scarcity of capital itself, which is also a resource. Capital is a resource. Really, it's you can make the argument that it's a natural resource, but I would rather say it's a naturally occurring resource, because money wasn't invented by governments. They want everyone to believe that, but money arose naturally in the course of human interaction, human action, free markets. Primitive people used whatever shells or beads, and then eventually they discovered precious metals, and gold became like the standard for money for like thousands of years throughout many great empires. So our current situation is, and there's a whole other story about this, about how governments conned people into giving up their gold, or forcibly took away their gold in the case of FDR, in order to have complete fiat currency, so that money is printed only by the government and is completely managed by the government. So that's the situation we're in right now. So UBI is going to require more money than anyone ever fathomed. So you can pay everyone $5,000 a month or whatever, and it's going to change. the next year they'd be like, well, we need an increase of politician, we need an increase in UBI, it's not enough, and everyone would vote for that guy because, yeah, I want more money. So they never address the problem of the shortage of money, because I got a little bit ahead of myself. Money, as it naturally occurs when it's tied to a natural resource like precious metals, means that there's a finite amount to it. So that ties down the value of it. That makes it impossible for someone to come and say, well, I'm just going to make the price of gold this, or this, and raise it, which is what they can do with the dollar. So, and that's what they do with the dollar, but they're very cautious about it, because if they do it too much, it creates an agitation in the economy. And this is the part of the reason why we have boom and bust cycles, why we have depressions, and why we have inflation. None of these things really existed before fiat currency. So you think that so this leads to the big question that you want to ask everyone who says they support UBI. This is the big question, and it's so funny if you listen to these guys talk about UBI. You watch the shows where they're talking about UBI. They go on. These guys will talk for a whole hour about UBI and how great it is, and they will never, ever, never touch upon the biggest question. And the biggest question is, where are you going to get all this money? Where are you going to get all this extra money? So the problem is, the answer is would probably be something like, well, we'll just have the government print more money. Well, you can't do that. You can't just have the government. Even now, in the current fiat system, the government is very cautious about actually printing money. Like the Federal Reserve tries to manipulate things by, manipulating the interest rates, or by buying like government bonds or investing money in things like that, to manipulate the economy without printing more cash. And the reason for that is because printing more cash, it doesn't work. It doesn't help. What happens is it just creates more cash in the economy, more units of dollars, makes the value of everyone's dollars go down a little bit. And that's what inflation is. That's exactly what inflation is. It's very simple. It's very simple math. There's nothing esoteric about understanding how economies work and why central banking and fiat currency is wrong and corrupt, and directly leads to inflation and the boom and bust cycle. So anyhow, they never talk about where they're going to get the extra money. So you see that they can't just like print lots of more money for it, because then that'll just make the value of it go down, and then they'll have to give people more money, raise people's like monthly salary even more, and then print more money, which makes the value go down, so they have to give them more money. So you see where this goes. So the other way they could possibly get money is by raising taxes. I mean, how they get money now, raising people's taxes. But wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, does it? You're raising the taxes of the person that you're going to give the money back to. This already happens, of course. This is already, this touches upon one of the fundamental contradictions in our current system, is that we're supposedly getting benefits and services from the government, but they're taking money away from us at the same time. So it's a vicious cycle, really, of a cultural sort of cannibalism. And something like UBI only it illustrates that, and it exaggerates it, and it will accelerate it. It cannot help but to accelerate it. Just as the limited welfare state that we have right now. Rather than the universal welfare state that we would have under UBI. So, and I talked about who will take out the trash and the fundamental problem with that. So, they never address that fundamental problem with UBI, and they never address the fact that in order to implement this, It requires an expansion of the powers of central authority beyond anything that we've ever seen before. So right now, we have like this, I like to call